Let's dive into a story today that I promise you sounds like it's straight out of a movie. It's a wild tale of ambition, of conquest, and of an American who decided, you know what? I don't need to be elected to run a country. I'll just go and take one.
I mean, think about that for a second. It sounds completely impossible, right? It's the kind of thing you just laugh off. But as we're about to see, history is often way stranger than fiction.
And here he is. This is William Walker. In the middle of the 1800s, this guy, a doctor, a lawyer, and a journalist, basically waltzed into a civil war in Nicaragua, seized control of the entire country, and made himself president. So how on earth did he pull it off?
To really get how this happened, we've got to understand the man, and we've got to understand the times he lived in. Walker's story is this absolutely bizarre chapter of American history, like a real-life story of a guy who wanted to be king.
People actually called him the gray-eyed man of destiny. A nickname like that tells you a whole lot, doesn't it? It just captures this almost mythical status he had, especially back in the American South. See, a lot of people saw him as the embodiment of manifest destiny, this popular idea that the U.S. was destined to expand. Well, Walker just decided to take that whole idea international.
Okay, so here's the key word for this whole story: filibustering. Now, we're not talking about long speeches in Congress. Back in the 19th century, filibustering meant you were a military adventurer, launching your own private invasions of other countries. And believe me, William Walker was the undisputed king of the filibusters.
So, where did a guy like this even come from? Was he some kind of military genius right out of the gate? Well, not exactly. His early life was actually one of startling intelligence, and then it took a really sharp, really violent turn.
The guy's early life is just mind-blowing. He was a certified prodigy, graduated from a university at 14, became a doctor at 19, but after trying out medicine and law, he moves to the wild frontier town of San Francisco and picks up journalism and dueling. Yeah, the man had this intense, restless ambition, and it was pretty clear a normal life just wasn't going to cut it for him. He was looking for a much bigger stage.
So his first crack at building a nation? It was a complete disaster. He and just a handful of guys invade Mexico. He declares himself president of a brand new republic, and the whole thing collapses almost immediately. But here's the really telling part. He gets back to the U.S., gets charged with waging an illegal war, and a jury acquits him in 8 minutes. That just shows you how popular these little adventures were back in the States, especially with people who wanted to expand U.S. territory and slavery down into Latin America.
Look at this, it just shows his sheer audacity. He didn't just invade, he made a flag, he set up a government, he built a whole country inside his own head. The Republic of Sonora might have been a total failure, but for William Walker, it was just a dress rehearsal.
You'd think that failing so spectacularly in Mexico might have slowed him down, right? Nope, not William Walker. Instead, he just set his sights on an even bigger prize: Nicaragua. See, before the Panama Canal existed, Nicaragua was basically the superhighway between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. A company run by the famous tycoon Cornelius Vanderbilt had this incredibly lucrative route cutting across the country. So if you controlled Nicaragua, you controlled one of the most important trade routes in the entire world. And Walker saw a golden opportunity. Now, he didn't just show up and invade. The guy was clever. He got himself hired as a mercenary for one side in an ongoing civil war. And with his small but pretty ruthless force, he just outmaneuvered everybody, took the capital city, and then, after ruling through a puppet for a little while, he just held a fake election and declared himself president. And get this, the U.S. government, under President Franklin Pierce, actually recognized his regime as the official government of Nicaragua. It's just wild. So from here, in this beautiful colonial city of Granada, William Walker, a private American citizen from Tennessee, was ruling an entire Central American nation. He even started what he called an Americanization program, making English an official language and trying to get settlers from the U.S. to move down there. But, as you can probably guess, his grip on power was pretty shaky. Walker's arrogance and his really radical policies quickly turned his new country, all of its neighbors, and some very powerful people against him. And right here, this is where you see his true vision. To get more support from the American South, Walker re-legalized slavery, something Nicaragua had abolished decades earlier. This quote, from his own book, just lays it all out. His goal was to create a white supremacist empire. And this wasn't just a personal belief, it was a political strategy. Remember, in the 1850s, the U.S. was speeding towards its own civil war,
and Southern leaders were desperate to create new slave states to keep their power. Walker's Nicaragua was supposed to be just the first piece of a golden circle of slave territories all around the Caribbean.
So what happened? Well, he made enemies literally everywhere. He stole Cornelius Vanderbilt's company, a very, very bad move. You don't mess with one of the richest men in the world. He managed to unite all of Central America against him, with Costa Rica leading an army to kick him out. Even the British Empire saw him as a threat. He was surrounded.
So when he was finally defeated and cornered, Walker's forces retreated. But before they left, they committed one final, absolutely brutal act. They burned the beautiful, historic city of Granada to the ground, leaving behind nothing but ruins and a sign with a chilling message: here was Granada.
So after all that, his presidency lasted less than a year. He surrendered to the U.S. Navy and was taken back to the States. And here's the craziest part. A lot of people still greeted him as a hero. But his story, it wasn't quite over yet.
Okay, this is where the story splits in two, because how William Walker is remembered depends completely on which side of the border you're standing on.
He just couldn't give up. Walker launched another expedition. But this time, he was captured in Honduras, handed over to the local government, and executed by a firing squad. The gray-eyed man of destiny met his end when he was just 36 years old.
In the U.S. today, he's basically a historical footnote. Honestly, most people have never even heard of him. But in Central America, oh, he is an infamous supervillain. The war against him is remembered as this heroic fight for their very survival, and his defeat is still celebrated as a national holiday in places like Costa Rica.
And this contrast just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got Walker's simple, almost forgotten grave in Honduras. And on the right, that's the huge, magnificent national monument in Costa Rica, which shows the Central American nations coming together to drive him out. Nothing could show the two different legacies more clearly than this.
So it all leaves you with this one really powerful question. How can a story that is so absolutely central to an entire region's history be almost completely forgotten in another? It's just a reminder that history isn't just about what happened. It's about what we choose to remember and what we choose to forget.